Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending the sixth part of HULATAM webinar series. In these sessions, we plan to introduce Harrisburg University's, the available resources and research that is going on right now. My name is Rozbe Sadikian. I'm an associate professor of data analytics at Harrisburg University, and I have the honor to be the host of this series. Harrisburg University is a private STEM-focused university in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, with one additional location in Philadelphia. And currently, we are so happy that we are extended to Latin America. We're coming to Panama, City of Knowledge in Panama, also in Colombia, and some more location in near future. We have more than 50 programs right now, and which are in undergrad, grad level, master up to PhD level. We have 7,000 students that are representing more than 100 countries. And currently HULATAM, the term that we use for our program at Latin America, offers Master of Science in Data Analytics, Project Management, and Cybersecurity from the instructors that are coming from Harrisburg University. The way that we offer these courses are in a hybrid format, which means both online and face-to-face sessions, and all by the professors from Harrisburg University. If you have missed our past webinars, they are all recorded and they are accessible through the YouTube page of Harrisburg University. During the talks, if you have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat and I will discuss it with the presenter. Without any further talk, let's start with our first speaker, Andrew Hacker. Professor Andrew J. Hacker is the cybersecurity expert in residence at Harrisburg University and founder and CEO of Thought Network blockchain company. Let me just let in people. Okay. The Thought Network is a solution enabling architecture with a full developer ecosystem that uses smart data automata to build fully decentralized and distributed big data analytics and AI models. At Harrisburg University and Thought Network, Mr. Hacker is building an innovative technology called data-defined computing that will enable smart data, smart cities, secure IoT, and the new data economy. Mr. Hacker is the former Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where for 6 years he supported the Enterprise Information Security Office in managing information security, guiding state agency CISOs and executives, interacting with state and federal partners, and protecting citizen data and government systems and operations. Andrew Hacker, it's all yours.
Thank you, Professor Rozbe. I really appreciate that introduction. Yes, I am a professor at Harrisburg University. I am the cybersecurity expert in residence. Graduated with an electrical engineering degree, and from there, funny enough, I didn't do one thing with electrical engineering, even though I loved it, and got directly right into computers after my degree, which led me very interestingly into the world of cybersecurity. We started doing cybersecurity, I think, before it really ever became a big thing. Once the internet started out, in the first years in the early 90s, there wasn't really a huge need for cybersecurity, and a lot of people didn't really understand, how the internet worked. But certainly, once people started being able to take money on websites, that was sort of the big thing, where all of a sudden we had to start being able to protect all the information that was on the internet. So, in my travels as Deputy Chief Information Security Officer and doing a lot of cybersecurity, we came up with the idea of combining data with logic into one unit. And basically, doing everything with these small units of combined information and data to make what we call smart data. So along those lines too, we came across blockchain, and I'm sure all of you have heard about Bitcoin, have heard about Ethereum, and blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and they've certainly grown from their original roots in 2009 when Bitcoin was originally released, to a huge ecosystem now with over 2,000, even more, cryptocurrency and cryptocurrency related projects. So if you'll allow me to share my screen, I will start my presentation. As Dr. Ruzba said, I am the CEO of Thought, and Thought is its own cryptocurrency. It is the world's first artificial intelligence blockchain, where we basically control artificial intelligent agents by using the blockchain. But first, let me just go through and do a little bit of history, just for some background. So as many of you know, Bitcoin is certainly the first blockchain and first cryptocurrency, and still today is the most successful. And there's a metric called a market capitalization, which applies to stocks, but it also applies to cryptocurrencies. And it basically says how much money is in the system. So the system of Bitcoin itself has something around $2 trillion in US dollar equivalency in that cryptocurrency. So just a little history about how Bitcoin started. There were a lot of technologies that were brought together to create Bitcoin. Some of them cryptography, and if many of you know about cryptography, it's the idea of taking human readable information, whether that's text or numbers, and basically rendering it unreadable except to the people that hold the encryption keys. So you encrypt with one key and you might decrypt with another key, or there's a symmetric encryption where you're encrypting and decrypting with the same key. And a couple other technologies that predated Bitcoin, things like distributed ledgers, those have been around for a while. Time servers to verify that a certain thing happened at a certain time. These were all, pioneered by, other experts in the field. And there was a person named Satoshi Nakamoto, and you guys can see my screen, right? So he is the creator of Bitcoin. And what's very interesting about Satoshi is that it's a pseudonym, meaning it's not his real name. Many believe it's either one person, or it could actually be a group of people that have come together and created Bitcoin. And how they did that was they basically published what's known as a white paper. So on the screen here, we see Bitcoin's white paper, and this was published in early 2008, 2009. And it's basically, as it says, it's a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And the specification of Bitcoin in this white paper is actually very simple. It's very interesting, very powerful. And this was the basic technology that spawned all of the different cryptocurrencies and related technologies that we see today. Certainly the blockchain was a big piece of this. And many of you have heard of, a lot of the other newer innovations that are happening. There's Ethereum. Ethereum created smart contracts, and I'll go into a little bit about what that means in a second. Things like DeFi, decentralized finance. Probably some of you have heard of NFTs. They're known as non-fungible tokens, where people can actually buy and sell a single unit that represents a digital thing. So in most cases, NFTs can represent artists' pictures, and some of them sell for millions of dollars. So this is a basic structure of how blockchain works. And one of the most important things about Bitcoin and blockchain is that it allows for a peer-to-peer network. Peer-to-peer meaning, everybody within that network is at the same level of trust. So, I can have my computer, I can load up Bitcoin software, and I can connect right into that Bitcoin network without, any kind of entry gate, right? Anyone who has that software and can run that software can participate in the Bitcoin network. Trust between two people that wish to send or receive Bitcoin is established purely by participating in that network and by the network's design. So what we have here in front of us, if we look at this image here, these are actually blocks. So these first three squares here represent the blocks in this chain, and it is literally a blockchain. So it's a database of all of the transactions that happen on the network. But every node or participant on that network holds a full copy, if you run a full node, of every block and every transaction that has ever happened in that network since it started. So, back from when, Bitcoin started, all of those transactions are still there. It's a historical record of all of those different transactions. So here, just a quick overview of how this works. So that first block holds all of the transactions that happened within the time frame that block was created. And the whole network basically agrees, that's what's known as consensus, that those transactions that are going into that block are valid, first of all. Second of all, that there's a thing called double spending, that does not exist in these transactions, meaning if I send one Bitcoin to somebody else, that I can't send that same Bitcoin again to another party, because that would be, essentially doubling that and invalidating that initial transaction. And it also, this is the unique part, it also contains the hash, or basically a digital fingerprint of the previous block. And then the next block, contains, so block number 2 here in this picture contains the hash of the previous block, and so on. What's so powerful about this is if anyone were to go back and try to manipulate the previous history of any transaction or any piece of information in that whole chain of blocks, it would be evident at the newer blocks, because that new block would change. And any information that changes in this chain would become obvious, and it would invalidate certain parts of it. So that's basically how that works. Let me move on to my presentation here. So, yeah, as we said, blockchain is a distributed ledger. Each node holds a copy. There's mathematical encryption that creates new blocks. There's consensus and certain protocols that validate how these transactions happen and how the blocks are created. And as I said, things like smart contracts are created with protocols like Ethereum. Some common misconceptions, that Bitcoin and blockchain are synonymous. So certainly Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency that utilized blockchain. Now, blockchain is an independent technology. The fact that the source code for Bitcoin has always been open source under the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's open license, which means you're free to copy it. So basically, they took Bitcoin and created other coins with that. And I can show you some places where you can go to see what some of the other blockchains look like. There's things like Litecoin. I'm sure you guys have heard of Dogecoin, which was actually kind of a joke, but now that joke is worth $400 billion, so it's pretty interesting. Blockchain is immutable. Is it completely immutable and tamper-proof? No. There have certainly been instances where, either errors in the code or errors in certain components of the blockchain network have been vulnerable, and things have been tampered with. And so blockchain, from that perspective, it's not 100% secure, nor is anything ever 100% secure. But the whole concept in Bitcoin is that the good guys that create the blocks have more computing power than the bad guys that might try to change those blocks, to change the history. Another misconception is blockchain is a truth machine. Blockchain doesn't necessarily say things are right or wrong. It's up to the data that's in the blockchain. Blockchain just allows a large group of nodes to agree on what they are putting in that blockchain. Okay, so let's look at some real-world examples of things. So just to show you what an actual blockchain looks like. So this is our blockchain. This is our cryptocurrency called Thought. The symbol is THT, and I'll show you what an exchange listing looks like. But these are actually real time here. So you can see this is refreshing in real time. Here are some incoming transactions. Each transaction has an ID. Each block has a number. So if we click on this block, here's some information about that block. The number of transactions in the block is 3. The block height is 1,210,788, and this is the latest block right now. There's a timestamp on it. This Merkle root is interesting because this is actually a hash, and a hash is a digital signature which represents everything that it's encrypted with. So it basically is a fingerprint of these transactions, and these are all transactions that show different amounts of THT, which is the coin, being transmitted to these specific addresses, okay? Another thing we see here is what's known as the difficulty. And the way Bitcoin mining works, and mining is essentially how the network maintains the blockchain. So miners in a Bitcoin network are responsible for taking transactions, assembling into the block, and then finding the answer to a very difficult puzzle. It's known as a nonce, and that nonce is a number that is then cryptographically hashed. But that nonce is very difficult to find. And the way miners find it is they basically solve this problem millions and millions and millions of times until they find the right answer to the problem. And the answer to that problem gives them the hash of the block. And the more computing power that's on the network, the more difficult we make this, and the more difficult we make the puzzle for the miners to find the answer to that puzzle. So that's another interesting piece about blockchain. So actually, while we're talking about this, let me show you what some of the code looks like. So this is the GitHub repository for Thought under Thought Network. You guys can go there and take a look. It's fully open source, so anyone can kind of go through and read this. But just to kind of point out some of the interesting pieces of this code for those of you who are developers. So there's basically a specification for our chain, and our chain is different than Bitcoin. Essentially it's very similar, but these are some of the interesting pieces of information that are part of it. So there's all kinds of things like block time. So this basically says that we create a new block roughly every 2.5 minutes, or about 1.618 minutes. There's proof of work target time span, for example. This basically says how often we change the difficulty. And there's some other consensus things in here. So this is basically the roadmap of how this blockchain works. These are some of the network specifications, but just to kind of give you guys an idea of what a real blockchain looks like, or a real cryptocurrency in this case. Another quick thing I'll show you, because I'm actually quickly kind of running out of time. So this is our coin. This is THT, and this is actually our first exchange listing where you can actually see the price, because people are actually able to buy and sell the coin, right? So we can see the price fluctuates based on different things. But if we look, and I'll show you real quick what some of the other coins look like quickly. And if you guys haven't ever been to this site, it's called CoinMarketCap, and this is basically where you go to find information about every cryptocurrency, token, DeFi, NFT, and even you can see here too, there's this new thing coming out that's pretty neat called the Metaverse. In fact, Facebook changed their name to Meta because of this, and it's basically cryptocurrency enabled virtual world. So you can see there's a lot of activity in crypto. There's a lot of innovation, and even right here, I misspoke when I said the number of cryptocurrencies was about 2,000 to 3,000. I think I was thinking a little older, a couple of years ago. 15,000 projects, right? So this includes NFTs, non-fungible tokens, DeFi, but that's quite a bit. Bitcoin's market cap is $1 billion. So there's $1 billion in US dollars in the Bitcoin network. And same thing with some of these other projects. So that should give you a pretty good idea, about the whole ecosystem, about this technology. I mean, certainly, creating a blockchain or a cryptocurrency, it's not easy. There's a lot involved with it, but it's very interesting. It's very fun. And if any of you are ever interested in starting up your own, I can certainly help. But there's lots of resources out there. There are even guides that kind of tell you, how to take existing cryptocurrencies and change them to do some interesting things that you might want to do with it. So I think I'm out of time. Ruse Bus, is it time for Q&A or?
Yeah, thank you. I don't see any question coming, but yeah,
Okay.
Questions coming actually. Kevin is typing.
Okay.
But if anybody has any question, okay. So Kevin is asking, how do you make money running a currency market?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So it's actually not easy to do, if you can imagine that. If you think about, if you create a company or a startup and you start small, and the idea when you have a startup is to basically create something that's going to be of value to somebody, right? So if you create a startup and you come up with, some widget, and they always use widget as the thing they talk about, some new innovation, some cool thing, maybe it's a water filter or something that might help people. As long as you can create that thing, even if you don't create the final version of it, but you kind of start with a concept, you start with an idea, you start building that idea, you start kind of working through the possibilities of how that thing will work, how people will use it, and you identify the market, right, which is who are the people that would buy this thing. That's kind of where you start. And in comparison to a startup company, creating a cryptocurrency is the exact same thing. In the early days when there was just Bitcoin, it was very easy to kind of say, well, I'm going to create something that's just basically Bitcoin, but I'm going to change it. I'm going to call it Litecoin. And that Litecoin's worth quite a bit of money still now. But basically, you need to come up with an idea. You need to understand how blockchain works. What's the potential value of an idea that you have that can utilize blockchain or cryptocurrency, and then basically put together a summary about it. And you have to talk to people and say, hey, I've got this idea. What do you think? And maybe they say, hey, that's great, and they might get interested in it. But basically, you have to, develop your product, develop your idea, even develop your cryptocurrency in this case, and then you have to tell people about it, and hopefully they're interested to put money into it. I mean, that's essentially what it is. It's either people investing money in it, or there's a market for it. So in Bitcoin's case, Bitcoin at the beginning of 2010, believe it or not, was worth less than a penny. And the whole reason I created my cryptocurrency is because I realized I knew about Bitcoin back then, but I never, if I would have plugged in a laptop back in 2010 and started mining Bitcoin, back in 2010, every time you found a block, and when there was a lot less other nodes on the network, it was easier to find a block, you'd get 50 Bitcoins. 50 Bitcoins today, Bitcoin's $56,000 per Bitcoin. 50, that's, if I do the quick math in my head, that's about $2.5 million. I might not be doing it right, but it's a lot of money. Back then, it was worth less than a penny. And actually, the first real transaction that happened with Bitcoin was somebody actually bought, it's pretty famous, you can look it up, 2 pizzas from a pizza shop for basically 10,000 Bitcoin. So that 10,000 Bitcoin today is worth something like $50 million or a huge amount of money. And I'm not doing the math in my head right. So basically, it's about creating interest, creating demand, and then to actually get real money into a cryptocurrency or a token or something related, is you have to be accessible on some market. So if you remember when I showed you that exchange, that cryptocurrency exchange, that's where you would go. You would basically list your coin or your token and hope that people would buy it, right? And it's not always a sure thing. Certainly now with so many projects and so much competition, you really have to be able to stand out. You have to do marketing. You have to, write press releases. You have to have a good website. And you have to build a faithful community. I think that's one of the key pieces. If you've got a good idea and you can convince other people that you have a good idea, we have social media groups on Telegram, on Discord, Twitter. There's a lot of different venues, but the more interest you can get, the more people that you can get to talk to them and talk about the possibilities of what you could do with your cryptocurrency and your technology. Conceivably, the higher your price should go. So, but it's not a guarantee. But certainly, building a project is, part technical. It's part, doing some programming and getting things together. But it's also a lot of work. There's, it's really, you have to build a whole company, a community. I'm going to call it a presence. When I say presence, I mean people have to be able to see you, right? But the good thing is that there are a lot of people that are interested in cryptocurrency. When we first started out, and if you think about the progression, Bitcoin was the first in 2009. Nobody knew about Bitcoin. As I said, it was worth less than a penny. And it took it probably, 1 to 2 years for it even to be worth 5 cents or 10 cents. But then as that community grew of people that said, hey, this is great stuff, and more people got involved, and more use cases or reasons to use Bitcoin came out, the price started going up. And it went up faster and faster and faster. And, even back in 2018, Bitcoin was only worth $600. And then I think when we first launched ours in the beginning of 2018, Bitcoin was probably about $2,000. I think it went up to about $20,000. But even back then, the acceptance of cryptocurrency wasn't there because there was a lot of uncertainty about how it was used, how regulatory agencies and governments would see it. Because, in the end, the whole reason Bitcoin was created was to basically take third parties out of the equation, meaning that, everyday people could transmit this Bitcoin back and forth to each other effortlessly, right? So if you think about the banking system now, you have to have a bank, right? That bank is the middle person, the third party in between you and the person you're trying to transact with. And what else do? They take fees, right? And some of the fees are pretty high. So there was some uncertainty as to, certainly Bitcoin is an alternative way of doing money transactions. So, is Bitcoin competitive? Yes. How did the regulators see it? And that was, 2018, 2019, even 2020, there was still a lot of uncertainty. But the great thing is that at the beginning of 2021, I think the momentum, the number of projects, the amount of innovation that was happening in cryptocurrency basically turned a lot of heads. And all of a sudden, the acceptance of cryptocurrency kind of took off. So it's huge now. So was there any other questions or?
Yes, there's another question. We have 2 minutes. If you could quickly answer to this.
Sure.
The question is that, so the creator needs to own a portion of the tokens to earn money from it?
Yeah, well, yes. And typically when you start a project, you create they're called tokenomics. It's sort of the specification of how many coins there are. Bitcoin, it's 21 million. If you're writing the code, you could change that number to whatever you want to be. Some of the Dogecoin knockoffs have trillions of coins. But yeah, typically the project creators, either they allocate, a couple, you don't want to take too much, but maybe you take a couple percent, 5%, maybe 10% for the team to motivate the people that are doing the actual development. Or if you're launching it and it's a mineable cryptocurrency, you're mining it before everybody else knows about it, and you have and it becomes harder to find coins. So you might mine some coins initially. So yeah, the project team typically either creates it so that they have some benefit or some interest in that coin, or you mine it.
Thank you. That was very helpful and very interesting presentation. Thank you, Andrew.
Great.
Thanks.
All right, so thanks, guys.
Thank you. Next presenter is Dr. Farooq Anjum. He is the Associate Professor of Machine Learning and Blockchain at Harrisburg University. He is an expert with over 20 years of experience in building complex systems with focus on wireless, machine learning, and cybersecurity. He has been the architect of a wireless network for IoT devices that have been deployed in more than 30 countries. He successfully launched several consumer-facing products, including mobile TV and Qualcomm systems engineering experience on the first app store in the world launched by Qualcomm. His current focus is on Bitcoin, crypto tokens, and blockchains. Dr. Anjum has published more than 60 research papers and an author of 2 books and was awarded 10 patents. He had a PhD in electrical and computer engineering from the University of Maryland, College Park. Dr. Anjum's research interests are in the areas of artificial intelligence and blockchain. He is also very interested in entrepreneurship, having been the co-founder of 2 startups. Dr. Anjum, please.
Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing here? I guess you are not able to talk, but let's get going. What I plan to do, let me just blow this up. Okay, perfect. So what happened here? Give me, okay, perfect. So I'm going to talk about Bitcoin and crypto assets. By the way, can these guys talk, Roosbay, or their mics are muted and they don't have the capability of talking?
No, nobody can talk, but they can type in the chat box.
They can type in the chat and they can raise their hands. Can they raise their hands? Not sure.
I
Okay.
don't know the audience can. Yes, they can. I can see them.
Yeah,
So they
perfect.
can.
Raise their hands. Raphael and others. Thank you, folks. I'll be asking questions. Let's make this a slightly interactive. Okay. Before I get started, let me see by show of hands, how many of you here own Bitcoin or some other crypto assets like Ether or Dodge or something like that? I would like to see, raise your hand if you own some Bitcoin. Roosbay also. And let's say Rafael. Anybody else? Andres, I see Stefani, Uribiel, Jose, Juan, Raul. Okay, good. So let's get going then. So if you look at it, people are expecting crypto to be the next revolution. And I got this comparison graph. You can see the source is crypto.com. They were comparing how the internet was growing in the early days of the internet. In the early days of the internet, somewhere around 1990s and the decade following 1990, you can see the total internet users in green shown out here. And then the same guys that looked at the crypto users, the number of users using crypto starting 2014. And if you look at it, there's a close match between the users of the internet in the early 90s and the crypto users over the last several years. And in fact, if you look at it, globally, the crypto users are exploding. Just over in the early part of this year, you had about 100 million users in Jan 2021, and within 6 months, the number of crypto users all over the world, it just doubled. So things are exploding. So it means there is something out here in the crypto world. And many people are expecting crypto to be the reason for the next internet revolution, for the next technological revolution, for the next IT revolution, just like internet was the reason of the last revolution. How many of you folks think that crypto would be the next big thing? Raise your hand if you think crypto is going to be the next big thing based on what you know. Not based on what I'm telling you, not based on what you guess, but based on what you know. How many of you here, Juan thinks it's going to be the next big thing, Rafael thinks it's going to be the next big thing. Anybody else? What about Andres and Stefani and okay, Jose thinks next big thing. You would be right. You see, the internet has resulted in multiple companies worth $1 trillion or more. Facebook, Google, Amazon. These are all big companies worth maybe $1 trillion or more than that, somewhere thereabouts. And all these companies have been made possible, or all these companies owe their existence to the internet. And similarly, we expect a lot more companies that will be made possible because of this crypto revolution. So let's look at this. What is this? So this whole thing started as a replacement for money. In the previous presentation, Andrew was talking about how in 2008, this person, Satoshi Nakamoto, he came up with a white paper, and then Bitcoin came into existence and all those details. I'm not going to go into the technical details here because I was not sure about your backgrounds, but I'm going to give you the big picture out here. And how does Harrisburg University help you understand the big picture? That is what I'm going to focus on in the next 15 minutes or something like that. Again, I repeat, I'll be giving you the big picture, and then I will show you how Harrisburg University, through the courses that we offer, can help you understand the big picture. And that's why you should look at Harrisburg to understand the big picture as far as the crypto space is concerned. So it started out, this whole movement, crypto movement, started out as a replacement for money in the form of Bitcoin in 2008, 2009, about 12 years back. And it still continues. Bitcoin has still been operating very well. Currently, it's worth about $55,000, $57,000, whatever it is. It varies somewhere, but somewhere in the close to the 60,000 US dollars. That's what I'm talking about here. And then that's how it started out. And now we talk about concepts such as non-fungible tokens. We talk about concepts such as Constitution DAO. And there are thousands of crypto coins, as Andrew pointed out in the previous presentation. Of course, Bitcoin has a market cap of about $1 trillion. If you want to purchase all the Bitcoins in the world that exist today, you will have to spend about $1 trillion to purchase all the Bitcoins that exist in the world today. Similarly, Ether is another crypto coin. And I look at Bitcoin as a possible reserve currency in the future. I consider these other coins, Ether and Binance and Tether and all that, as crypto assets, not really as money. Why? I'm not going to get into that here because in these 15-20 minutes, it's not sufficient. But again, we look at the reasoning behind all this in the courses that we teach here at ISM, at Harrisburg University. So we started out with just a possible replacement for money. And now we are looking at various concepts, NFTs, DAOs, lots of tokens, creating your own token, creating your own coin, and all of those things. But this technology is all well and good. But really, you got to step back and ask yourself, what problems does crypto address? I mean, because if it's just technology, it's not addressing any problems that exist in the life of human beings. Well, the technology is not going to go far. You got to invent, you got to create technology, invent technology in order to solve some human problems. And that is when the technology can go places. The technology can become very, very valuable. So from that, from that perspective, crypto addresses three problems. Money problems, which I'll talk about in detail in just a while. Trust problems, ownership problems, and there are more. I do not want to get into all of those other problems, but at least give you a flavor of three different types of problems that Bitcoin and other crypto coins address. Let me pause here for a minute to see if any of you have any questions about this or anything that you would like me to repeat again or something like that. Okay, nothing, is it, Roseby?
No questions.
Let's keep going then. So what problems does crypto address? Let's look at the money problems first. think about the money that you have. So what is the money that you use in, how many of you are here from Panama and how many of you from Colombia? Raise your hand if you are from Panama right now, if you are based in somewhere in Panama right now. Just curious. Okay, Juan, Jose. Okay, only two from Panama. How many of you from Colombia right now are based in Colombia now? Do you have people from other countries also here, Ruzbek?
I don't know. Maybe Kevin knows better.
Okay. Okay, Rafael from Colombia. So, okay. So you have people from Panama, we have some from Colombia. Anybody else from any other country? You can type it out if you would like to let us know which country are you currently logging in from. And so think about each of your countries. In each of your countries, do you think the money that you have is fully under your control? If you think about it, not really. In the US, which is where I am currently based, Roosevelt is based, Kevin is based, the main campus of Harrisburg University is based. In the US, as I'm sure you all know, our currency is the US dollar. But let's assume I have $5,000 in my bank. Do you think I'm in complete control of the $5,000? Not really. The bank and the government, they can seize my money. They can basically lock up my account. So they are giving me permission to use the $5,000. So this money that we all use in our life these days, it's not fully in our control. There are third parties like the banks, there are government entities which control that money. I think I have control, but not really. And that is one problem that Bitcoin addresses. Bitcoin creates money that is completely under your control. You do not have to depend on, or you do not have to trust third parties or the government to do the right thing. Remember, even with cash, if you have saved cash in a mattress in your bedroom, even that cash is not in your control completely, because the government can ban the notes that you are holding. They can say, in the next 4 hours, these notes are banned. And that happened. I originally come from India, and in India about 2 years back or 3 years back, the government gave about 3 or 4 hours notice, and they banned certain high denomination notes for some reasons, which means people who are holding those high denomination notes, after 4 hours, those notes were no longer valid. They could not be used. Of course, the government said you could go to the banks and exchange them, stuff like that. But if the government had said, sorry, it's all illegal, then what happened? All that money is now worth zero. If I had a lot of those notes and I was very happy, in the morning, in the evening, the government bans it, okay, I'm poor. So that money is not completely in our control. Bitcoin is completely in our control. In addition, these currencies, they are called as fiat currencies. They are given by the fiat of the government, the decree of the government, the rules of the government, the order of the government. The government typically can produce more and more of these fiat currencies that can cause things like inflation. $1,000 today will not be worth the same as $1,000 a year later, because the government could have created a lot of extra money in the system. With Bitcoin, you cannot inflate. There is a preset amount of Bitcoins that will be created. You can't inflate it away. So that's another problem that Bitcoin solves. Why is that important? Maybe not in the US, but have you heard about Lebanon? Have you heard about Venezuela? Have you heard about Turkey? And many other countries, Argentina, Zimbabwe, all those. What happened there? And probably in some of your countries too. I'm not completely familiar with the countries that you currently come from, nor do I want to comment right now. But still, in many of these countries, Lebanon and all these other countries, the inflation became so bad that things that were worth 1 unit in the morning would be worth 10 units in the evening. So that was the inflation part of it. And further, in Lebanon, definitely what happened was people who had put their savings in the bank account, they lost their savings when the banks refused to give them back their money that were deposited with the banks. So money was not fully in control. That would not be the case with Bitcoin. Another use case for Bitcoin in real life. You see, the country of El Salvador, they have made Bitcoin as legal tender. You can go to El Salvador, you can spend dollars, which is US dollars, which are legal tender from 20 years back, or you can also spend Bitcoin there. Any merchant in El Salvador is compelled to accept Bitcoin if you give the merchant Bitcoin. And so one of the problems that the El Salvadorian government expects to address is this transfer of money. There was a lot of money being taken away. People from El Salvador will be working in the US and other countries over here in the Western world, and they would transfer money to the people who are staying in El Salvador. And companies like Western Union, etc., they would be charging a lot of money to do the money transfer. From, let's say, a person from El Salvador working in the US to a person in El Salvador. It's not just El Salvador that had this problem. Nigeria, another country, they get a lot of money into the country from other external countries, as a result of which there are a lot of these money transfer agencies that make a lot of money. With Bitcoin and some of these other cyber crypto assets, you can transfer money very easily across borders and instantly. For example, there is an app widely used, at least in the US, and it's available in El Salvador. Not sure about Panama and Colombia, but there's an app called Strike, Strike. I can connect the Strike app to my bank account here. And if I want to send money to a person in El Salvador, he might have that Strike app connected to his bank account in El Salvador. And within seconds, I can transfer money from my bank account to my friend's bank account in El Salvador, or to my friend's bank account in Europe. And transfer is instantaneous. The amount of money transfer fees is no longer $40, $50 to send about $1,000. I'll be spending maybe 15 cents, 30 cents, a dollar, depending upon the time of the day and stuff like that. So think about it. How much money is going to be saved, because money can be very easily transferred across borders. And more importantly, the revolution is also because people expect these cryptocurrencies to be the internet money. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, look at this layered systems that makes up the internet. And Bitcoin sits on top of the various other protocols. I'm not going to get into the protocols, but I'm sure you heard about TCP/IP, HTTP, which makes it possible for us to connect to web browsers, and SSL TLS that makes it possible for us to shop online, going to Amazon.com or whatever other companies that we have and that we use to shop online. So Bitcoin is another layer on top of the layers that existed, and we expect more layers to come on top of Bitcoin here that leverage the capability of Bitcoin, so that you no longer have to have a gatekeeper that is connected to the real world or fiat money and transfer dollars or local currency and all of that stuff. In addition, if you look at the history out here, in each of these layers, we had huge multi-billion-dollar companies that were created. 3Com focusing on the Ethernet layer, Cisco on the TCP/IP layer, Amazon as one example. There are multiple other examples leveraging the HTTP protocols, PayPal taking advantage of the SSL TLS protocols, and of course Amazon also took advantage of that. And now people are expecting lots of trillion-dollar companies, I should not say billion-dollar companies, trillion-dollar companies to be created as a result of Bitcoin and whatever else is going to be built on top of Bitcoin. So those are some of the problems in the money space that Bitcoin addresses. What are some of the problems in the trust space? Think about corporations. Corporations come into existence, they promise you certain things, And then once they start succeeding and once they're successful, they change their promises, they change the rules. That has happened with many corporations. Google, for example, do no evil, and then they change the rules. Twitter, they change the rules. So a lot of these companies do that. And that's where, how do you ensure that the corporations do not violate the trust of customers? This technology of crypto, Bitcoin, blockchains, etc., enables you to create something called decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. And if you want to think about a DAO, a mental model for a DAO is nothing but it's an online group of people that get together with some preset rules and a common treasury. That's where the Constitution DAO that I showed you a while back, that is one example of that. About 2 weeks back, people heard that one of the original copies of the US Constitution was being auctioned off by Sotheby's, or maybe it was Christie's, one of those auction houses. And what happened? A group of people got together, and within 15 days, they were able to raise about $46 or $47 million online. The rules were set, and they tried to bid to win the auction. Of course, they did not. That's a separate story. But the bigger story is within about 2 or 3 weeks, people were able to come together, create the rules as to what how they are going to govern themselves, and then raise about 45 to 47 million US dollars. That was a tremendous achievement. People are expecting to now form online DAOs, the online corporations, DAOs, to create something like Facebook, to create something like Twitter, so that you decide the rules beforehand, and then you join this organization and do whatever you're supposed to be doing. Another area where crypto helps is this concept of ownership. Think about digital media, the audio file that you have, the video file that you have, or any other digital media. There is no concept of ownership, or rather there has not been any concept of ownership of digital media so far. Crypto makes it possible for you to claim ownership of digital media. Just like the Da Vinci paintings that are exhibited in world-class museums like the Louvre in Paris and stuff like that, where you have a painting, somebody owns it, others can make copies of it, but there's only one owner, or there is one group of owners of that painting. Similarly, in the digital world, you might have a video, you might have one owner of that, you might have a painting, digital painting, and you might have just a few owners of that, and that has happened. And that is made possible through what is called as non-fungible tokens that facilitates the ownership of digital media. So crypto makes that possible. And that's where you might ask now, is crypto a hype? Well, because you might have heard about several scams that happen in this space. Even today, I was reading somewhere where people or hackers were able to siphon away about 40 million US dollars through one of those projects that exist in the crypto space. You might have heard about many people losing their life savings with all the scams that are happening in this space. So you got to watch out. Not everything is going to be successful. So not all crypto is hype. And how do you separate the hype from the non-hype? And that's where I'm going to talk about Harrisburg University. Specifically, I am part of the ISM program at Harrisburg University. And in here at Harrisburg University, we have multiple departments. Rusbe, as he said, analytics, project management, information systems engineering and management. And in here in the ISM department, we do teach courses on crypto. A couple of courses that I show out here: blockchains and trusted systems. So how do you build trustworthy systems from non-trustworthy components? That is how Bitcoin has come into existence, and many of these other concepts, NFTs, DAOs, etc. Another famous blockchain is the Ethereum blockchain. How do you leverage that? How do you build something on top of it? So those are some of the things, those are some of the courses that we teach here, so that people have the skills needed in order to join this new revolution and take advantage and benefit from the new revolution. So with that, I took a few extra minutes for what I was told by Rusbe, but I'm going to stop here. I was not seeing any questions also, and that's where I ran over. That's what I wanted.
To be honest, there have been tons of discussions and questions. We just didn't want to interrupt you. The last question was that you mentioned DAOs, decentralized things. Do you have any examples for them that you could share with us?
Sure. I mean, the you should Google up Constitution DAO, which is what I showed you in here. This is a famous example, most famous example. What happened? A copy of the US Constitution was up for auction. A group of people said, hey, we got to buy it so that we can decide where are we going to display it, and the people own the Constitution. So people got together, decided a set of rules, and they collected about 46 million or 47 million US dollars. Of course, they did not win the auction, but that's what happened. So that's a famous example of DAOs. Again, if you think of a DAO, think of a online organization with a common treasury. So right now in real life, what do? You some of your friends get together and then you pull in money, and then you have a bank account somewhere, and one of your friend will control the bank account, and then you have some set of rules saying that this is how you spend it. But the friend who owns the bank account, or if a group of friends who have a joint bank account, they decide how to do. They might change the rules. You can't do anything about it. With DAOs, those things can go away. Again, I'm not saying DAOs are a silver lining for everything, but DAOs are definitely a solution to some of the problems that we see with the existing corporations that we have.
Thank you. We also had a comments when you talked about the assets and cryptocurrencies that we have. Rafael mentioned that the government prints more money because it's not based in an asset.
Exactly. The government, the dollar, for example, in the US is not really backed. I mean, at some point it was used to be backed by gold, but now it's backed by what is called as the US Treasury, which is again another aspect of the US government. So it's not really backed by anything. So they can print as much as many US dollars as they want. Well, there is a systematic this one. They produce a treasury note, and they can print dollars as a result of that. So there is no real control. There is some sort of a formal process that has to be followed, but that's right.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That was a very interesting presentation, and I'm sure that the audience also enjoyed it. I'm sure about it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Got it. Yes, folks, I was not. And see, some people said he's from Colombia. Rafael said he's from Colombia, but live in the USA and stuff like that. I'm looking at the chat now, but yeah, I missed that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So that's the end of tonight's talk. Again, thank you. Thank you very much, Farooq, and also thank you, Andrew, for the great presentations that they had tonight. Special thanks to Dr. Kevin Huggins, who is here right now. He is the HULATAM rector. Don't forget that this session is recorded, and it's going to be on YouTube channel of Harrisburg University, and you can have access to the other talks that we have had on that website. Thank you everyone for attending this session tonight, and have a good night. See you next week with another talk. Thank you everyone, and bye.
Bye guys.